Joining me now is attorney T. Greg Doucette, who describes himself on his Twitter as an ex-computer scientist, now criminal defense and First Amendment attorney in North Carolina and Texas, host of the F 'em All podcast, dog lover, and a hashtag Never Trump conservative. T. Greg, thanks so much for joining me again. It's been a while since we've spoken. How are you?
Wow.
Wow. It's been a fast 5 years. Prior to those 5 years, it was in a totally different world. We were at the end of Barack Obama's term, and we were talking politics then. And I brought you on because you're conservative or do you even consider yourself conservative anymore? How do you identify now?
Y'all gonna put me on the spot, man. Philosophically, yes. I would say I'm still conservative. You know, one of the ways I explain it to people is that if you put political philosophy on a spectrum, things the government must do, should do, can do, should not do, must not do, I'm going to have more stuff in the must not and should not side, fewer things on the must and should side, and then a whole bunch of stuff in the middle that, you know, I'll leave to the folks in politics to decide whether they want to do it or not. So I'd say I'm still a conservative. I'm not a Republican. I left after Trump got elected in November because I knew it was going to be a mess. I didn't realize it was going to be as bad of a mess with 500,000 Americans dead from a pandemic and the economy being what it is and everything else. But yeah, I still think I'm a conservative, but I'm just definitely not a Republican anymore.
But I don't even know how that works, man. When conservatives, okay, I'm not going to put you on the spot. I'm going to put your work on the spot because you do a lot of great work in the areas that I'm interested in, right? In the areas that are important to a lot of progressives. We can just go back recently to the George Floyd protests. You started an entire library cataloging police violence in Black communities, brown communities, and just all communities. Talk about that library because it really became a pivotal component in fighting against the police brutality that was happening during that summer.
Man, it started as an accident, truthfully. Like, you know, I've been on this hobby horse about police brutality and misconduct for years. You know, I've been sharing stuff on Facebook for years, been sharing stuff on Twitter for years. You and I met because of that case back in 2016, where that Black teenager had been charged with reckless driving for doing donuts in the street when the street wasn't wide enough to do donuts in. You know, that was my initial brush with Twitter fame. And throughout all these years, anytime I ever share a video or a story about police doing something wrong, you know, and I do it a lot. My entire podcast every week is like 20 stories of police misconduct from around the country. We've been doing that for 4 years now. Someone comes in and will say, oh, it's just a few bad apples, or, oh, they had it coming, or, oh, if they had just complied, everything would be fine. And that's not true. That is not true at all. So when the protests started, you know, the folks that were watching those first few days, that last week in May, saw a lot of really wild stuff. And my thinking was, let me just take 10 of these videos. You know, there was a video where they're shooting someone at point blank range with a rubber bullet. There's another one where they're actually taking aim at a broadcaster on camera as she's broadcasting live. There's one in Utah where the SWAT team rolls up and first thing they do is push an old man with a cane to the ground because he's Antifa supposedly or something like that. You know, and I put those 10 videos together, posted it on Facebook and said, come at me. You want to tell me that this is just one bad apple? You got 10 bad apples now. Explain this. Right. So to keep that same energy on Twitter, I took those same 10 and I put it into a thread. And my expectation was that was going to be it. You know, we were going to talk about those 10 and call it a day. But so much stuff kept popping off that people started sending me videos. And so I put them in. I was like, okay, I had 10, here's the next 5. And then it became the next 25. And then by like a week in, I had thousands of direct messages on Twitter with everyone's like, did you see this? Did you see this? Have you got this one already? And it just turned into this, I don't know what you would call it, man. It's almost a nightmare. Like I log into Twitter every morning and there's nothing but hundreds upon hundreds of new videos of police brutality all over the country. Doesn't matter whether it's Black folks, brown folks, white folks, doesn't matter if you're in a city or a rural area, doesn't matter if you're blue state or red state, everywhere. Police were going buck wild on camera and did not care at all. It was a wild.
So it's interesting. I know even for the audience that's watching or listening to hear a white conservative talking about police brutality and being at the forefront, at least for his audience, when it comes to discussing those stories and posting those videos. I know that your counterparts, your friends, your frenemies within the Republican community probably were telling you not to. They had to be, right? So what was that like? Did you get any pushback from the Republicans?
So that's the crazy part. It depends. It really does. So I don't know if any of y'all know Irving Kristol. He's the father of Bill Kristol, big time political pundit. One of the things he used to say is that in America, you had two types of conservatives. You had ones who are anti-state, and you had ones who are anti-left. The only things they care about is the opposite of whatever the Democrats are for. You know, I've always been part of the anti-state side. So when you look at police misconduct, the fact is police are government employees. They're government agents. They are paid with your money to protect and serve. And when they're abusing that, you know, that's the type of anti-government, anti-state stuff that I've always been about. So I did get some pushback. Absolutely. I've got some folks that, you know, I used to talk to as far as like political stuff that are very much nothing an officer can do is wrong. But at the same time, you've got a lot of people, at least they used to be in the GOP. A lot of them are unaffiliated now, that are like, this is not what the government is supposed to do. The government is not supposed to roll up on you and because you said some mean words, pepper spray you in the face. You know, they're not supposed to be firing bullets. You know, there's that one in Texas where this woman was just walking home from the grocery store, not doing anything, and she got shot by the police. You got the journalist in Minnesota who had her eye blown out by the police. You got the young black man in Washington, D.C. walking home, doing nothing, not part of a protest, got his eye blown out by police. Like that is not something that anyone should be in favor of, regardless of your political views. It just doesn't make sense to me. And so from my vantage point and the few folks that I still deal with, you know, I don't really talk to the Trumpers anymore. I mean, those folks, this whole, you know, Orange God King stuff, I'm not down with that. But among the folks in the party that recognize that this ultimately is an issue of the government violating your rights, your God-given rights enshrined in the Constitution. You know, you're protected from unreasonable searches, seizures, deprivation of life, liberty, property without due process, all that stuff. That is what we are supposed to be about. And it just happens that, you know, I took that to heart and some of the Trump-loving GOP did not.
I'm laughing because
not surprised.
Yeah, I mean, because I just don't even know why you can identify as a conservative anymore. And we you know, whenever we come on, like it's only been, you know, it's been 5 years, but I tend to avoid what we probably would disagree on. And maybe one of these days when we have a lot more time, we could just, you know, jump on each other's podcasts and just kind of like talk about the things that we actually disagree on, because everything that you just said is fundamentally from the left. That's our perspective. Like we honestly believe everything that you just said in terms of the role of government, limited government in those regards. I want to shift though really quickly to the level of ignorance that has to be spoken about, because it is now contributing to 500,000 people being dead, now moving closer to 600,000 dead. There's a video, I don't know if it's from Idaho, but let's take a look at this video where now they're burning masks as a symbol of their patriotism, and a symbol, if you ask them, they're going to say it's a symbol of their conservatism. Let's take a look at that clip.
Hold on a little bit. Fire out.
Dude, people are right here.
Training them up as they
you think about book burnings, they're having a mask burning here, and kids are leading. Like, it's being celebrated.
it's so tacky. I can't even believe it's happening, but it's America, child.
And listen, man, like we're friends. I'm not going to dare make you accountable for any of that just because you identify as a conservative. But underneath it is a level of ignorance and derangement that is detrimental to our survival as a species. And
right.
And I'm wondering, not only obviously I know you think that that's, you know, a level of stupidity as well, but in the broader conservative circles, I mean, are there at least like 5 more like you who honestly can look at this? And is there 10? Like, because I feel like a verse out of the Bible. Like, is there at least, if there's 100 conservatives who look at that video and think it's ignorant, then maybe we could save America. But I don't know, man. What do you think?
So I'm gonna start by saying yes. Yes, there are other people like me out there. They exist. There's some of them I chat with by email about trying to figure out what the step is going forward, whether you start a new party or try and save the GOP or whatever. But I'm gonna push back ever so slightly, just a little bit, because let's remember a lot of anti-science nonsense percolates on the left too. Anti-vaccination stuff, the whole use of these healing stones and stuff like that. So now look, I'm not going to lie to you. GOP is worse
ignorance is bipartisan. I give you that.
Right. So I'll stipulate the Republican Party is worse right now. But I think part of why that is a lot of Republican politicians are spineless. They're cowards. They're not willing to tell the truth to their constituents. If they were honest about the severity of the pandemic, you would not have 500,000 people dead. If Donald Trump said, look, this is going to be bad. This is going to be as bad as the Spanish flu, potentially worse. Wear a mask to stop it from happening. You would not have had things get as bad as they did. But the man was running for re-election. He was not willing to speak truth because he's afraid that it was going to cost him the election because he's a moron. If you look at people like Cuomo, for all the scandals he's in right now, he saw a tremendous bump in his popularity because at the beginning of the pandemic, all he did was go on TV and say, it's bad. This is how bad it is. Have some graphs of how bad it is. Gavin Newsom in California, he's on the verge of getting recalled. But the fact is he had a tremendous boost in his popularity when he started doing the same thing when this started. Any politician who is competent, who has just certain basic understandings of politics and how to govern, could have turned this into a tremendous boost to their popularity. Had Donald Trump said this is going to be severe, wear a mask, he would have gotten reelected. Guarantee you, he would have beaten Joe Biden and he would be president right now. But it's because he's a moron and the people in Congress backing him up are morons. They are terrified that they're going to get primaried. Being in office is the only thing they care about. That's ultimately the problem. If you have people in Congress who are like, you want to primary me and vote me out, fine, but I'm going to tell you what it is, like it or not. We wouldn't have had this problem. And so you look at, that mass burning, that's stupid because it's not just, hurting the combat of the disease. It's polluting, it's littering. It's a waste of perfectly good masks. I mean, you could have given them to anybody. You could have sold them joints on eBay if you wanted to. It reminds me, like, I can't remember what it was, what Keurig did to get in trouble. But when there was this whole spate of Sean Hannity viewers throwing their Keurigs out the window, like, you spent the money to buy the Keurig and now you're destroying it. Like, what purpose does that serve? That's just stupid. Yeah,
it's really dumb. What's wrong with our healing stones over here on the left? Like, we can't.
Look, and I'm Haitian, so there's other things that I have to know. Just kidding, but people should
all of the science. On both sides, I will agree with you that there is stupidity, there is ignorance, and there's misinformation being passed around. Right? I just gotta highlight it a little bit more on the right, on the conservative side. But you're right. I can agree with you with that 100%. So I want to circle back to that conversation that we had just for me, for an education purpose. What is now, because there is a space where we can separate. You said it, not me. We can separate conservatives from Republicans. Could you explain that a little bit more to me?
I mean, you're really looking at people who you got to decide, is the issue the tribe? Is that more important? I'm a Republican before everything else. Yeah. Or is the issue the stuff that we pretend the Republican Party used to be about? The people that are going to be honest with you will tell you the Republican Party of today, none of the things they claim to believe, they haven't held any of it. You had a tax cut that exploded the deficit. It used to be fiscal responsibility was a thing. This whole notion of personal responsibility. Well, part of that is staying home if you can, wearing a mask when you're out in public to take care of your fellow man. You look at the whole concept of dignity of life. We're all made in God's image. We should all be, treated as special from birth. And yet they're excusing police killing people because someone happened to have a mental health crisis and the cops got bored and decided that exterminating them was the more appropriate option. The Republican Party of today has no principles. It is exclusively an anti-left party. They are in favor of whatever the Democrats are against, and vice versa. You know, you look I don't know if y'all saw the interview with Oprah with Meghan Markle and Prince what's his name. You know, you have Republicans defending the British monarchy. These are patriots in air quotes, you know, and they're defending the things that we rebelled against in 1776. Like, there's no coherence to anything that the Republican Party stands for today. I stipulate to that. But if you look at the people who actually care about the philosophical stuff, they care about good government, they care about personal responsibility, that sort of thing, those folks exist. Now, whether they're going to become Democrats, I doubt it, but they might. Some will. You know, most of them are just going to be, you know, kind of unaffiliated, stuck in the wilderness, trying to figure out what happens next. And, you know, I don't know what's going to happen with them in the future.
I asked you this. I asked you a question like this 5 years ago, and it's coming back to me. I'm going to ask you again. Do you think you could run as a Republican in your state and win at any level, whether it be state rep, state senator, or congressman?
Hell no, no chance. So like when I ran in 2016, you know, it was, I live in a very Democratic district. So even when I ran, I knew I was going to lose. But if you look at the partisan lean of the district, it was a D plus 36 district. So in a normal year, a Democrat should win by 36 points. My opponent won by 31. So we at least picked up a 5% margin. I got more votes than any Republican who would ever run from my seat. I outperformed Donald Trump. I outperformed Pat McCrory, the guy running for governor. You know, I'm in this low-level state legislative seat, and I'm doing better than the people with all the money. Obviously, I had some kind of something that appealed to crossover people. I don't know if it's my personality, my platform. I don't know. I couldn't tell you. But now, I'd never even make it past the primary. There's no chance. The fact that back in 2016, I got told that if I did not support Donald Trump, I could not expect any support from the state party. Wow. My response was, well, I guess I'm not going to have any support from the state party because Donald Trump is unfit to be president of the United States. I stand by that. Would it have been nice to win? Absolutely. I would love to be in the legislature trying to fix stuff. But the fact is, I got to be able to sleep at night. And everything I said back in 2016 was absolutely true. Because you look at the past 4 years, and like I said, I knew it was going to be bad. I didn't know it was going to be this bad. Right. So everything I said, everyone's like, oh, you're being hysterical. There's no way it's going to be that bad. It was worse. It was absolutely worse. So no, I could not run as a Republican. The problem is that I couldn't run as a Democrat either, because even though, you know, they love the justice reform stuff that I'm talking, I'm going to say only some of them love the justice reform stuff, by the way. The love of police brutality is strongly bipartisan. Yeah. But even if they bought that, when I say stuff like, are we sure the government should be doing X? I don't know what X is, but they pick any X.
I was waiting for X. I was like, what's X going to be?
I'm like, you can pick a thing. Like, there's stuff that the state government could probably do that the federal government absolutely should not, and vice versa. But pick any given topic. If it's something that you even question whether or not the government should do it, I get so much hate on Twitter from those folks. You know, every month I do an Ask Me Anything thread. And anything where I even hint that maybe the government is not the appropriate way to do this, people flip out. Let me give you an example. I'm going to give you an example right in the justice reform area. One of the insurrectionists who got arrested for raiding the Capitol on January 6th happens to be a trans person. And they were stripped naked and held in isolation in jail because they had an untreated arm wound and they were going on a hunger strike to try and get attention for, you know, getting medical care. Well, in prisons, when you go on a hunger strike, the first thing they're going to do is put you on suicide watch. And when you're on suicide watch, they put you in isolation. So this person was stripped nude, held in isolation, where the guards could just walk by and stare at their naked body whenever they wanted. That type of stuff is inhumane. But when I pointed out on Twitter that is not how our prisons should operate, that is not how the government should keep people who've not been yet convicted of anything, I had a whole bunch of Democrats saying, no, screw those people. Those are insurrectionists and Trumpers. They get what they deserve. You know,
when you said it, I hate to say it, but that's how I felt when you said it.
That's not how I felt.
I do see what you're saying. It is inhumane, and that shouldn't be happening. And that is a systemic thing, and we have to stop it at the root. We got to make sure it's not happening to anyone. So
let me jump in here only for the sake of time, because we have one more guest coming up that we absolutely have to get to. Greg, the next time we come on, I want us to only focus on what you and I disagree on, right? Okay. Because I feel like it's that. I think that'll be.
You sure you want to do that?
Yeah, because it's not often you run into a good faith conservative. So I like if we got a good faith conservative in T. Greg Doucette, I want us to have a good faith conversation on things, because actually I agree with you on the inhumane treatment of that particular prisoner. Like I mean, I guess I could say detainee, the way America works. But T. Greg Doucette, tell the people where they could find your work and how they should get up with you.
So primary thing is on Twitter. It's at Greg_Doucette, GREG_DOUCETTE. You'll see the police brutality mega thread pinned to the tweet. You know you got the right guy. I am not the Canadian bodybuilder Greg Doucette. He's super famous on YouTube. That is not me.
That's why you got to put in T. Greg Doucette.
That's what happened when I Googled him. I'm like, who is this? This is Addison.
You see a guy like, doing muscle poses and everything else. That is not me at all.
Gotcha. Duly noted. We got to get you back here sometime. Good. It can't be another 5 years before we have you back, man. Thanks so much for joining us